for our community in so many ways. And she's going to read our very first proclamation of TDOR. Kristyn?
I want to welcome you to your City Hall. You know that this building is open to you. There's no reason why we can't fill this roof at some point in time. This is the second opportunity for us to raise this flag, and I recognize that for the trans community, it is a long, long journey to equality, and we are certainly not there yet. There's a lot of work for us to do, and I know that for those who've been in the front lines doing that work, asking for equality, demanding for equality, wanting recognition, hats off to you for all that you've done. I want to acknowledge a few folks who are here and to thank them for their time, and that of course are the Aboriginal elders and the people of the First Nations. We are standing on unceded territorial lands of the Mississauga and New Credit, and Toronto has been home, traditional home to a number of Aboriginal people. So thank you for hosting us here today. Transgender Day of Remembrance, and this is a very, very unique day. It's not every day that we get to stop and take a moment to reflect on things that have happened, and I think that over the past little while we've actually now been hearing more about events around the world that are causing a lot of concern, whether it's happening in Beirut or whether it's happening in Afghanistan or in Paris or right here in Toronto. We have a lot of work to do to advance humanity and to make sure that we treat each other with kindness and love and compassion. We have some city councillors who are here, and I want to acknowledge them because I think it's very important to let them know that we appreciate that their work is important, and they've been supporting the community day in, day out, whenever they can. And Councillor Fletcher is here, Councillor Cressy is here, and they will acknowledge and they will tell you that they follow the lead of the community for the work that you do. And they will stand beside myself and the mayor and city council to ensure that your voices are not lost. But there is a leader in this community who also has done extraordinary work at the province, and I want to single out her activism in particular, and that's MPP Cheri DiNovo. You've been an incredible ally and an inspiration for our community, and I want to thank you for always being there for us. I have the honor of reading the very first proclamation signed by the mayor of Mayor John Tory, and this proclamation is to commemorate this particular day. And the mayor is very regretful that he's not able to join you here today, although he was there last year, although he did not read the proclamation because we didn't have one. But I assure you that Mayor Tory is very committed to making sure that all voices are heard, and that this City Hall, the symbol of our democracy in Toronto, is always open to the community. And the 4 years that we had where we felt shut out, and perhaps some of you may still feel shut out, we're going to work really hard to make sure the front doors, the back doors, the side doors, and every single window is open for you. Thank you. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas today, November the 20th, communities across the country and around the world will mark Transgender Day of Remembrance. This day is dedicated to honoring and mourning those who have suffered and those who have lost their lives to transphobic violence and injustice because of their gender identity or gender expression. In 2014, 268 murders and 77 violent acts towards trans people were reported across 28 countries, 47 of them in North America and 2 in Canada. As horrifying as those numbers are, they underrepresent the size of the problem, since many acts of violence and death go unreported, and far too many of their own hand due to the constant oppression of societal transphobia. Recent studies show a 41% suicide rate amongst transgender people. That is 25 times the rate of the general population. While people of all gender identities, races, backgrounds have been victims of transphobic violence, the majority of these deaths were of trans women of color. On this solemn day, let all citizens of Toronto stand with trans people their children, parents, friends, and partners, and commit to working towards trans right and safety. Now therefore I, Mayor John Tory, on behalf of Toronto City Council, do hereby proclaim November 20th, 2015, Transgender Day of Remembrance in the City of Toronto. Thank you very much.
Right now, we're just going to raise the flag. So this is Rocky Clark from the Toronto Trans Alliance, who has worked so hard on today's presentation.
Move again.
Please welcome the wonderful MPP Cheri DiNovo.
Yes, I do want to acknowledge, first of all, the difference of opinion in our many communities, and I do want to acknowledge that there are degrees, of course, of discrimination. And when you look at the stats around trans death and trans violence, it's absolutely trans folk of color, trans Aboriginal folk who suffer the most. And I think that has to be acknowledged. And I think we have to acknowledge as well, and I think the demonstrators behind me have a point here, that this is a somber day, that this is a day when we remember those people who aren't with us, that cloud of witnesses who are with us in spirit but no longer with us in body. And this day is dedicated to them, those that paid the ultimate price for being different, for being trans. And certainly I want to acknowledge the organizers as well, because this is a feat to get us to this point. But we're just starting. We're just starting. Until every child can grow up in a world where they can be who they really are, we're just starting. Until there is no more Trans Day of Remembrance, until we don't have to gather together to commemorate deaths that should never have happened, we're just starting. Until, of course, things like, and we're still working on them, there's a bill coming forward I'm bringing to marriage equality, parental equality. We still don't have that in Ontario. We don't have health care for trans folk. We don't have housing or employment for trans folk. Until we achieve all of that, we're just starting. So we're just starting. We're going to move inside. We're going to continue the discussion. We're going to continue the struggle. Please keep those spirits in your heart today. It's a sad, it's a distressing day. It's a day to commemorate our sisters and our brothers, trans folk everywhere. Thank you.
We'd like to start the ceremony today by inviting Whitebird from the Cree clan in Toronto, First Nations, to open our ceremony.
My name is Waboowe Whitebird. I'm going to share a welcoming song with you. I was presented tobacco today to come here and share a song and just support pretty much. Thank you very much for letting me share that song with you guys.
Biko Beauttah is a human rights activist born and raised in Kenya. She moved to Canada in 2006, and we are so glad she did, so we can have her with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Biko.
Thank you for the warm introduction. How cold was it outside? Not bad. Wasn't that bad? That's a Canadian. So good afternoon, Toronto. I'm delighted to be with you at this trans flag raising ceremony on Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is being observed around the world today across borders, cultures, and time zones. We've come a long way since the first Transgender Day of Remembrance in 1999, which was triggered by a desire to recognize and celebrate those who lost their lives to transphobia, and to focus attention on the continuing violence against us. But there is much to be done. Almost a decade ago, I sought refuge in this great country because it was illegal to be who I am in almost all countries in Africa, which is where I come from. I don't know if you guys realize, but in other places of the world, and I know you do realize this, the struggle really is real. And I'm actually feeling very fortunate that I live in this utopia where I'm allowed to express myself and be who I am and live my life to the fullest of my potential. But despite the cultural policies and advances we've experienced, we still live in a world where too often being transgender is to live in the shadows, on the margins of society. To paraphrase an American congressman, the T in LGBT is still an afterthought. We in the transgender community face hurdles that cisgender people can't quite fathom. Society may applaud and praise Caitlyn Jenner as a hero for living her truth, but it turns a blind eye to the routine humiliations of the average trans person who doesn't drive around in luxury vehicles surrounded by burly security guards. Many of us would be happy just to have a decent job. If you look at any major corporation today, you will find many out and proud gay and lesbians. Why? Because these corporations have strict policies against harassment and discrimination, which have attracted a talented, hardworking gay and lesbian workforce. Such protections have in turn allowed many gays and lesbians in the developed world to become upwardly mobile, have good jobs, get married, raise families, and live dignified lives as contributing members of society. But why, I ask you, don't we see in those same corporate offices the faces of people who identify as trans or gender nonconforming? Why is that? We all know that it was trans-identifying and gender nonconforming people who threw the first brick at Stonewall. Brick by brick, we've helped lay the foundations for the freedoms that gays and lesbians now enjoy in the same corporate world. I stand before you as a trans woman, and I'm here to tell you that my community has been locked out of the house that we helped build. Society's ignorance and lack of understanding and compassion means that being transgender can be dangerous to your life. Trans bashing and assaults against trans people remain high. This is unacceptable. Transgender people are harassed and abused at home. This is unacceptable. Less than a year ago, the Ohio teenager Lila Alcorn killed herself because her parents refused to accept her as she was. According to her suicide note, they misgendered and ridiculed her. They subjected her to so-called conversion therapy, which is just another form of abuse. This is unacceptable. When we still live in a world where many trans teens see suicide as the only way out, clearly there is much more to be done. The goal of our journey through life as human beings is to find ourselves, to try and discover the key to happiness. Well, some of us do find the key only to be punished for it by society, who robs us of our dignity in many ways, such as denying us access to education and obstructing our efforts to make an honest living. We often are subjected to the most severe forms of discrimination in the workplace, unable to obtain identity documents, bullied by coworkers, treated as freaks, if not frozen out of the formal labor market entirely. Extreme levels of unemployment and poverty in the trans community has forced 1 in 8 trans people into sex work or drug peddling. Many resort to such underground economies just to survive. We have a lot to do to get up in stride with the rest of the society. According to a Trans Pulse survey, 71% of trans people have at least some college or university education, but about 50% earn $15,000 a year or less, compared with an average income of $38,099 for the rest of the population with a secondary education. A National Center for Transgender Equality study found that more than 1 in 4 transgender people have lost a job because of bias, and more than 3/4 have experienced some form of workplace discrimination, or have been denied a job simply because they identify as gender non-conforming people. Let's put this in perspective. Not that many people would say they want to work in a meat processing factory. The wages are low, the hours long, and the tasks less than appealing. But if someone did want the job, the person could get the job even if they were a convicted felon. As a trans person, if I had a PhD in meat processing and I applied for a job in a meat processing factory, I would not get the job. These are the state of affairs that my community is living under. Today, more of us are comfortable coming out, a sign of progress. That in turn increases the number of us who can bond, network, speak out, and become activists. Has the higher visibility exposed more of us to heartache and harassment from a resistant society? Yes. But it is the price we pay to achieve our rights, and I mean rights, not privileges. We demand fairness, equality, not special treatment. We must redouble our efforts to break the cycles of stigma and discrimination. Let's get this done. Thank you.
This year, 2015, we are looking at a number of 271 trans people murdered. Just outrageous. We're now going to bring up Alex Abramaovich. Many of you know Alex. He's a Toronto activist who's been working for many, many years on LGBTQ2 spirited youth homelessness. And here we go. Thank you, Alex.
My name is Alex Abramaovich. I'm a trans man, sometimes proud and other times filled with shame and guilt. But no matter how proud or how much shame, there's always an undertone of fear that I know that many of you can relate to. Today is a very sad day for us. We are here to remember the trans lives that have been lost due to hatred and violence. We are here because there is an epidemic of suicide amongst trans youth. This day also raises public awareness to the violent reality that so many of us face on a daily basis. And when we talk about violence against trans people and when we commemorate the lives that have been lost, we must first and foremost acknowledge that trans women of color face the highest rates of discrimination and violence. It is not right, and this violence needs to stop. Transphobia is a major contributing factor to homelessness. Transphobia is dangerous, it is toxic, it is violent, and it leads to suicide. Transphobia is killing us. The world needs to learn to celebrate the lives of trans people, because there is nothing more beautiful than being able to be yourself, and because trans lives matter. People need to stop pathologizing our bodies, stop staring at us, and stop treating us like we are a disease. Trans narratives are so important. We need to make more space for more people to share their stories, because all of our stories are important, and they will help change the world. I asked a young trans person what it is like to be a trans youth experiencing homelessness in Toronto. And here's what he said. I have no place I feel safe. There's nowhere to go. I thought that there would be, because this is Toronto. If the rest of Ontario has nowhere for me to go, I thought Toronto would at least have somewhere. But they don't, and I have been all over the place. I have been everywhere in this area. There's nowhere to go. Try living in a world where it's hard enough to love yourself, but even harder to be accepted. Going into a place where you think that you can be safe. Going into a place where you assume that you can get help, but every door that you try to open is locked or sealed shut. You're trying to walk back to where you started, but that door is also locked. You try very hard to break down that door, and once you get through, you realize that you cannot be you. That's what it's like. May we continue the fight against fear, hatred, and ignorance, and may we do so with love and with hope. We need to have hope, especially on days like today. I look forward to a future in which we no longer have to gather on November 20th, because each and every one of us deserves to live. Thank you.
An enthusiastic community activist. We're delighted to have with us today Jade DelaCruz.
Hello everyone, my name is Jade DelaCruz. I am a first-generation Filipino Ethiopian Canadian, and I am 21 years old. I am queer, I am non-binary, and I am a trans FTM. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him. On this day of remembrance, where we honor our transgender heroes who came before us, as well as those who have passed due to transphobia, it is important we come together as one to lift each other up and support each other within the community. Trans visibility has increased over the last few years. However, trans people of color are too often overlooked despite the high rates of murders of trans women of color. The stories of trans people with disabilities are all too often ignored. Those of us who are a part of the trans community, who do not identify with or identify outside the gender binary, are subject to constant denial and erasure, not only from our oppressors, but with people from our own community. It is important to be inclusive of our gender non-conforming counterparts, and to use the appropriate language so as not to erase the struggles that non-binary trans people face. We are all struggling. To live our lives every day in the ways we want to, and the ways we have to, is revolutionary. We need to stick together. Mainstream society already enjoys policing our bodies and gender. The last thing we need to be doing is policing members of our own community. Now, we all showed up here today for the same reasons, to remember and honor lives lost within the trans community. So let's respect one another, let's support one another, let's listen to each other, and lift each other up. Let's show the world how strong the trans community really is. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce, please, Maybella, who is two-spirited and trans, and welcome to speak with us today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maybella. I'm a two-spirited trans woman. I was asked to come here to speak today. All two-spirited trans lives matter. All trans lives matter. Two-spirited trans women take their lives from depression, abuse, rape, overdose, or being murdered, or taking their own lives by suicide. In some Native communities, we are accepted or not accepted by our community members. As being a two-spirited trans woman, there's a lot of things in life that it comes with being marginalized, stigmatized, and not being accepted. I stand here in front of you today. Two-spirited trans lives matter. All trans lives matter. I wrote a poem. A friend of mine, she was a youth, committed suicide in September, and I wasn't able to go to any of remembrance services for her. So one day I just wrote a poem for her, and it goes like this. You, my Nicki friend, Autumn. We met on a beautiful autumn day. Your soul was amazing. Your sparkle shines in your eyes. The fall wind blows through your long, beautiful mane. Your spirit dances so gracefully around the room. You put out positive vibes. I can see your beautiful smile. You were born in the autumn. You left us in the autumn. You danced in the autumn. You're on a journey now. You leave us, your autumn spirit, and all of us. Abramaovich. Thank you very much.
And our next speaker is going to be speaking in memory of Sumaya, a beautiful trans woman who took her life this year. Would you please welcome LaLi Mohamad.
She was murdered. I know her parents. I'm Somali too, and I'm sorry.
Thank you for that correction, my brother. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge two things. First, the brilliance, the boldness, and the badassness of East Africans in this room today. My sister, Kenya, I see you. My brother, Ethiopia, I see you. Thank you for living your lives out loud. I appreciate you. I see you, and I hear you. Secondly, I also want to acknowledge the protest that was going on outside earlier. Community work is difficult, we know this. It is complicated, and I cannot speak to intra-community conflicts, and I have no interest to do that. But I also don't want to pretend that they don't exist, particularly when the trans people that were outside this afternoon were trans women of color and trans women with varying disabilities and abilities. And so I want to thank you for showing up, even when it's most difficult.
Thank you for thanking us.
I also want to think about who is not in the room today. I want to think about the trans women of color who are imprisoned. I want to think about the trans women of color who are undocumented and are afraid to come to spaces like this because of the high visibility of police officers and are terrified of being detained. And I want to think about the trans women of color who bear the brunt of the brutality of transphobic violence. Trans women of color, black trans women like Sumaya. 221 days ago, we got a phone call that Sumaya was dead. 221 days ago, 10 months ago, February 22nd, the Toronto Police Services called us and said that your friend has passed. And since then, absolutely nothing has been done by the Toronto Police Services to figure out what has happened to our friend. Absolutely nothing.
Shame.
They refuse to communicate with the family under the guise that they are waiting for autopsy reports, that the reports that have come in are inconclusive. The deaths of trans women, particularly trans women of color, are always inconclusive.
Shame on the Queen for making us believe in her.
A little bit about Sumaya. Many of you in this room knew her. She was, as Laverne Cox would say, a possibility model. She lived and loved and created and curated in the margins of our society with the fiercest of walks, the fiercest of bags, and the biggest of hearts. And by being so bold and so brave and so fiercely herself, she allowed everybody around her to be their best versions. She inspired so many of her friends to finally deal with and come to terms with who they really were. When we organized her memorial, although there was such a deep sense of loss in the room, it was also the first time that the largest gay community center in the country saw so many Black people in that room. And it brought so many of us closer together. It brought so many of us who have been relegated to the margins of the queer and trans community in this city together. And that's what Sumaya did. Sumaya, for so many of us, particularly those of us who come from the continent, her love for and so I'm also really thankful to the organizers of this event for wanting to continue to remember her. And I encourage the politicians in this room this evening, this afternoon, to figure out ways to show up for trans and queer communities beyond the fantastic policies that are showing up. Because so many of us need more than that. We need to know that when we are grieving and diligently mourning the friends who we have lost, that we lay them in the grave knowing what happened to them. That the lives of trans Somali women do not and cannot neither go unmourned or go unsolved. To this day, there is a trans Somali woman in 1998 who was found dead in the back of a police car. Her murder is unsolved. Sumaya's murder is unsolved, and so I hope that while we can come together and mourn the deaths of the women, particularly the trans women of color that we have lost, that we also remember that there is so much more work to be done. And part of that work is ensuring that when we bury our friends and our lovers and our sisters and our community members, that we ensure that they go into the grave with the decency and the dignity that those that were loved by them know what happened to them. And before I go, one of the last things that Sumaya posted on her Facebook account was that she was deeply saddened about the deaths of trans women of color in the United States of America. And before she had died, there were 8. That was 1 a week. And so I want to say their names out loud into this space. I'm calling out Amber Monroe, Casey Haggard, India Clark, Mercedes Williamson, London, Kiki Chanel, Christina Gomez, Reinwald, Penny Proud, Taja Gabrielle Jesus, Yasmin Vash Payne, Poppy Edwards, Ty Underwood, Lamia Baird, Shade Schuler, Candice Capri, Ashton O'Hara, Alicia Walker, Tamara Dominguez, and all of the names whose names are not on our tongues. Let us defend the dead friends.
Tuesday of Remembrance began when Rita Hester, a trans woman of color in the United States, was murdered in 1997. That murder still remains unsolved. Okay, next we would like to invite Rachel Clark, who is a Toronto activist, member of Toronto Pride's board of directors, and all-round great lady. And she's got a friend with her. Awesome.
I hope it's okay that I invited my friend here. I'd like to just acknowledge a couple of things of my own. First, it's interesting being in this room because I see a lot of names here of very staunch allies of our community, and I see a lot of names of people who would do everything they could to deny our rights here. And so I want to acknowledge that there's names here that we need to fix that. Also, I want to acknowledge that our community is built on the fact that we have the ability to protest systems of injustice. So thank you for doing that today.
You're welcome.
Since 2008, there have been nearly 2,000 murders of transgender and gender diverse people worldwide. We have determined rates of suicide attempts in our community to be nearly 10 times the national average. Violence instituted towards transgender people is at all-time highs, and much of it remains unreported due to a number of factors, including fear of reciprocity, both by the perpetrator of these crimes or the institutions put in place to protect us. As frightening as this is, because our systems are not enabled to count transgender people, nor keep track of transgender violence, I fear these numbers are much, much higher. If you are here with us today, you're doing so because you want to remember the people who have died, especially trans women of color, as a direct result of transphobia and discrimination, mostly at the complicity of our society, who has a very vocal segment who believes that transgender and gender diverse people are not people, that we are not equal, that we are not citizens and taxpayers, that we are not worthy of protection under the law, that we are not worthy of the determination of our own healthcare needs, that we are not worthy to be employed because many places are needlessly concerned about how to accommodate and instead choose to discriminate. That we are not worthy to speak up against systems of inequality that often results in violence for us on the other end. And if you're here with us today, in whatever capacity, I implore you to help stop it now. If we are incapable of having contempt for our inequality, then we will never be equal. We will never be free. I am not willing to accept inequality in anyone. I am not expecting to sit here on the bottom of a privilege tree and wait to be lifted to the high branches above. Equality means being aware of the sacrifices being made in our community and honoring that as we are today, while accepting that we are deserving of more. We need to coalesce as a community to bring each and every single person the promise of equality. And always remember that you deserve no less than that. I asked Stella to come here with me today. Say hi, Stella. And the reason I did that is because I feel strongly that she represents a future we are trying to protect. I want her to grow up in a world where the murders of 2,000 transgender and gender diverse people are a sign of an archaic society long since past. I want her to grow up knowing that she has the same opportunities as every single little girl does and is free from having to worry for her safety, her employment, or her health care. And you, society, owe her that much. Thank you to the organizers of this. I'm very appreciative, and thank you to all for coming today.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're now going to hear from Rocky Clark, who is, we all acknowledge, and please remember that today is a memorial. We are here today to remember the people that we have lost. And as has been said many times, to hope that this can be stopped from continuing in the future. So I'm going to please ask, the protesters have been acknowledged more than once, and I'm going to please ask to everyone to respect our moment of silence and remain silent during that time. And please, Rocky Clark.
Hello, I'd like to call up my nieces to join me in leading the moment of silence. Come on. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. I wish it was a more joyous occasion why we're coming together here, but I thought it was important that the councillors acknowledge that, and the protesters, that this is not a celebration, but I want you all to know that I think it's important that we celebrate the lives that were lived, that we don't forget that they were there, and celebrate that so many people came out today to try to put an end to deaths and unnecessary lives being lost to the transphobia or any hate crime. So, with that said, and my little niece is getting a little heavy, we would like to honor all lives, recognize that all lives matter, and hope that everyone, regardless of how they choose to express themselves through self-expression, that they are allowed to, can be free to live their lives and safe and enjoy the liberties of our country like everyone else. Thank you. I'd like you to lead us in the moment of stand up for a moment. Sorry, you're slipping. Sorry. Stand for a minute, please. As we stand, can we please enter into this moment of silence and all meditate on how all lives matter.
Celebrate the lives of those that are lost. We have food, we have entertainment, and we have some other speakers, and we have a tremendous video called In Memory of Rita, which is actually a video that was made about Rita Hester. It contains actual footage of the very first memorial that was held for Rita, and the march, and her mother and her brother. So we hope you all join us in the members' lounge now for the reception. Thank you very much. Now we're going to hear from, longtime community activist, almost as long as me, maybe longer. I don't know, we'll have to compare our grades. Nicki Ward, please.
All right.
Welcome.
All right, listen, you guys know me. Hey, you at the back, come here. Right. Yeah, you, I'm talking to you, get over here. I'm talking now. Yes. Listen, I'm not you know I'm not frightened of walking that distance over there, pals. I see you, Rachel. Come on, chop. Come on, pick it up. Anybody else back there? Okay. So everybody else, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that my mother back there? All right, thank you. Come on down here, Mom. All right. I'm well aware of the fact that I don't actually need a microphone to project my voice. I'm well aware of the fact that we have heard about 15 too many speeches today. And that was before we even got here. I am aware also, and I'm very glad for this amount of time to speak. The point about speaking at these things is less, frankly, to do with what we say, but that we are here, able to say it, without fear of interruption. So the fact of the matter is that the best thing that we can do as out trans people is suit up and show up. That's the big thing. I've been at a bunch of TDORs in the past for, well, so as long as we've been doing them in Toronto anyway. And every year we say so many people have died, and we trot out sterile percentages and numbers that my brain just blurs at. I have mental dyslexia when it comes to numbers. I don't understand 27% of 3,000, that's of a 54th of 3/4 of a suicide. But what I do know is that every year at this time, we gather with fresh names in our minds and hearts. And so my role in this perhaps is to try and focus on the fact that this has nothing to do with numbers and everything to do with people. It is, of course, valid and right and proper and sweet and fitting that we should be sad, because many great and wonderful people have been lost to us. It is proper that we are sad, and it is proper that we have moments of silence. But it is also proper for us to have moments of noise. I would generally expect a little bit more noise from you. Okay? So the point is, I guess, that I am very glad that in Queen's Park yesterday there was a moment of silence. Too bad it didn't last a little longer. But I'm chin. No, but I'm very glad. It was genuinely moving. But in this sort of symbolic moments, we lose sometimes, I think, sight of the human cost of the human reality. Now later tonight at the 519, we're going to have yet another memorial. And some of us may well be memorialized out. But I invite you to come because it's got its own flavor and its own history. And it is by trans people, for trans people, and about trans people. This is a critical point that it behooves all of us who are trans, who identify as trans, to remember. There can be nothing about us without us. There can be no validity to a policy, any policy, when it comes to trans issues that does not merely consult with trans people at the end of the day to tell us what they've done, but in fact has trans people in it at the very beginning. Yes. Thank you. Yes. I am a survivor, as are, by definition, you. We have lived through the trans experience, and God willing, we'll live another year. So that gives us some degree of privilege. But it is shocking to me, as we sit in this wonderful council chamber, that not only is there not a single trans councillor in Toronto, nor in Ottawa, nor in Hamilton, nor in any constituency in this country. There is not an MPP, and heaven knows there is not an MP. We, trans people, are not in positions of authority, and yet decisions have been and continue to be made in our name. And that is wrong, and it must stop. And what this calls for is doing something uncomfortable. It calls to suit up, show up, and put yourself out there. Now, I ran for, I don't want to sound like I'm humble bragging here, because there's no brag to this. I recently ran for and got elected to the board of directors of the 519, beloved community centre here in Toronto. I will take some applause for that, because the fact of the matter is, doing that takes courage. The courage to be rejected. And the process itself was not terribly inviting. And as much as we love the 519, and I surely do, I'm volunteering a heck of a lot of time these days to it, it is stunning and wrong that I should be one of the very first trans people to sit in that position. It's insane. And when I tell cisgender people that that's the fact, they say, no, that can't be right. But welcome to the long list of things that can't be right when it comes to being trans. But as much as I love the 519, it is just a community center. It is just a community center with a geographical border that boundaries on Bloor Street and Dundas and Jobs and heaven knows, a small amount of downtown. It also has as its boundary what's called a constituency of common interest, which is, we decode it, is freaks like us. And that boundary is very, very large indeed, and the 519 does training as far afield as Prince Edward Island, which is a lot further east than Jarvis Street, it turns out. But as gracious as they have been to me, and as much as I value that, this now makes me, sorry Susan, the highest ranking official in the city of Toronto. Yeah, I don't know. I think I should clap for that. I don't know. Should I clap for that? I guess, that's...
Yeah.
Well, yes, anybody who served as a board of directors on a charitable institution knows that you have virtually no authority. But you know what, I had none before and managed to get a few things done anyway, so we should move forward on that. Look, I'm going to talk more later on today, and I am absolutely not going to number file you to death, because God knows, we've got enough thing killing trans people. Boredom should be one of them, right? So, did I just say that out loud?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But the crux of my message tonight, and I'm closing the show, closing the gig tonight, and I'm going to listen to what's been said and try and sum it up, but I know a couple of things that I am going to say. The first thing I'm going to say is that, one of the things we face as trans people is about accessibility. And that we say that there is a duty to accommodate, that trans people must be accommodated. No less than our friends in the deaf community who do not have ASL available to them today. I feel that's wrong. I wish I signed better than I do. I don't sign well at all. I was having a conversation earlier. I don't know where John is, but big enough to jump. The one thing I'm going to tell people tonight is in my very bad signing, is show people to sign for trans. There is a wonderful, and I love ASL because it's so expressive. This is enough. This is bullshit. I like that. But here I'm going to give you the sign for trans. The first, and I'm going to give you a way to remember it, okay? Some of you know this is the sign for beautiful, right? Beautiful, right? Makes sense. A face like this. And this, logically, is the sign for heart. Something like this. The sign for trans combines those two ideas. It's this. Beautiful heart. Go, I don't speak ASL. Go to somebody who does, ask them, you can get one of your little text apps, ask them to show you how to do it properly. That's a big deal. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to finish with later today, but I'm going to enjoin you to do it too, is, all right, we've been sad. We've had moments of silence. What are we going to do for the next 364 days?
Yes.
Well, I suggest the first thing we should do is stay alive. It's dark, but it's a fact. We're no good to anybody if we're 6 foot under. So number one, when you leave here today, and for the next 364 days, please stay alive. Secondarily, yes, okay. Let's applaud ourselves for staying alive. This is deeply, darkly ironic. The second thing is, I challenge you to go to places where we are not and occupy that space. I challenge you to push me up. There's nobody behind me kicking me in the ass. I want to be competing for positions on the board of the directors of 519. I want there to be more than one city councillor here. I want there to be more than one MP. Get active. And I don't care what your political stripe is. In this last election, we organized, a couple of us organized, to infiltrate democracy. And infiltrate all of the parties, even the parties that we don't really like very much. And maybe even especially those. Because if we want trans rights to pass in the future, we can't be playing partisan politics. We have to operate and demonstrate to them what they should have done years ago. That this is a human, emphasis, human rights issue. Trans rights are human rights. Yeah. No, trans rights are human rights. All right? So, thanks. Sure, what the hell? You gotta get on some exercise. We've been sitting down a while. The point is that I have no point. The point is I don't know what I do from one day to the next except I wake up in the morning and I fight. It gives me it's a raison d'etre. Listen, if you're just, don't die, if only because it's going to piss them off. If that's what gets you up and going, then God bless you, good luck. But in the next 364 days, I know what courage it takes to leave the house and just to be trans. And I know that going to the bathroom shouldn't be a political act, but apparently it is, right? But in the next 364 days, go out there, step up, and even if you don't get elected to that board or this board, you know what? You will embarrass the hell out of them that they have never had, we've never had one of you before. So, I hope you go and do that. But you know what? I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're here. And you know what? I don't know what we should do next year, but whatever we do, let's, for God's sake, let's do it inside.
Thank you.
So, I'm going to introduce Lynx in Lynx of Random Order, great guitarist. He's going to be performing at the Painted Lady tomorrow at 8 p.m. to promote, I think, the song he's going to be playing for us right now.
Thanks, Nicki. She speaks for me. Thanks to Boyd and the Trans Collective here for putting this all together, and Lucas, thanks for your strap. So much. So this song is called 10 Things, and it's about losing somebody you love. The hardest thing I've ever done was to say goodbye to you. We always had so much fun when we were just brand new. We'd run around town day and night. When you left, it shocked more than a few. That's only a fraction of how I feel around you. But that's my reaction. Toughest time I ever had was to watch you drift away. I knew that killer personality would eventually kill me one day. I miss your smile and the way you roll your eyes. That's only a fraction of how I feel around you. But that's my reaction. 10 things I love about you. But that's only a fraction of how I feel around you, and that's my reaction.
Once again, I just want to make clear that Strong Trans Alliance is currently 1,500 plus strong. The steering committee is made up of numerous people, and this event today was really worked on tremendously hard by Rocky Clark, and thank you, Rocky, for all the amazing work you've done here today. Next, we're going to have the lovely Jade.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Jade. Bit of a sad day, but I'm glad we're all together. Thank you guys for having me. I'm gonna do a song called Pillow. It's a little bit, well, you know, I think it's relevant for today. You know, I wrote it because of struggle and different things that we go through in the city as trans people. So, hope you guys like it. When I fell in love, I didn't know it, but I was younger, didn't know how to show it. You let me through, now I'm better off through the sex, through the shit, you're the shit, through the tricks, through the splits, you're the shit, I'm through with that, boy, you're the shit. And when I fell in love, but I didn't know it. If you ever need somewhere to lay your head down, roach, fuck this dope shit, this whole shit, put it all in for you, get legit for you, kinda too quiet. Shit, fuck this whole shit, this whole shit, fuck this whole shit, put it all in for you, get legit for you. And you can always talk to me, give you somewhere to lay your head down. On my pillow, I'm a little drunk, I'm a little stoned, I'm a little caught in the middle zone, little lost, little slided, you fucking know where you're at, boy. Oh my God, how you love me like you done for so fucking long. When I was a slut and I had no one, when you kiss me slow, you wanna know where you at? Clap for me, came back for a start for me, lay me back in this single mattress, I'm at listen, yeah, homie, put it back in the bitch. Oh my God, how you love me like you done for so long. Where you want my love, where you want my time. Never had no word for me, this red hot sparks in the fucking dark, and you kiss me so you wanna remember. You came in the clutch, we were fucking robbed by your fucking John, where you at? Oh my God, how you love me like you done for so fucking long. First off, got you back, I'll never fucking give you up. Make it out this motherfucking shit for us. Fuck this broke shit, fuck this dope shit, this whole shit, fuck this whole shit. Put it all in for you, get legit for you. And you can always talk to me, give you somewhere to lay head down. It's too quiet, but I'm rolling with it. Oh my pillow, when I lay your head down, you can have somewhere to lay your head down. Give you somewhere to lay your head down. Oh my pillow, on my own, all alone, I'm on the porch, tryna find the homies, tryna find some dough, and I'm winding slow to decide my soul. What you crying for? Where you at? 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 Give you somewhere, lay your head anywhere. Give you somewhere to lay your head down, anywhere to lay your head down. Motherfuckers wanna lay my fucking head down. Talk to me, give you somewhere to lay your head down. You can have somewhere to lay your head down. Give you somewhere to lay your head down. Somewhere to lay your head down. On my pillow, on my pillow, on my pillow. Fuck this broke shit, fuck this dope shit, this hoe shit, fuck this whole shit. Put it all in for you, get legit. On my pillow, on my pillow. so quiet. I'm not used to performing. You can find me on Twitter, Jade6, JADES @XXX. Mwah. Love you guys.
Thank you. First, I would like to invite Carolyn O'Reilly up to the stage. Carolyn is an artist dedicated to peace and love.
You know how these things rotate? I thought, oh, I'll save paper and not print. But
You could lie down.
yeah, I could lie down. I'm going to start with a song that reminds me of someone that I know that this poem is about. And this person didn't make it through adolescence and is remembered with the wrong pronouns. And the thing is, I was 11 or 12. A lot of the memories here happened before I was 12. And so I didn't have language yet as a teenager when he died. So this is a song for him. And then I'll just go right into the poem. It's called Poem of Remembrance. When I'm with you, there's a hole in my bucket. When I'm with you, my bucket's full of holes. When I'm with you, there's a hole in my bucket. A hole in my bucket. Recognize who you were, but not practiced enough to realize that it would one day wish it had whispered or fucking shouted, "You're the best, most real boy that I know." In the wintertime, we burrowed in snowbanks or tunneled through plowed piles of snow. The snow swallowing the sound of our whispers. Echoes in reverse. Do you remember? Beautiful boy, when I was 12, you were 11. A rose bloom of blood burst from my body into pink, plain pastel underwear. You were the first person that I considered telling besides my mother. Because I had wished for that moment more than candles on my birthday cake, more than my very own tape deck, a Nintendo Game Boy, more than having a fancy leather diary with a lock. I wanted that blood, evidence that life could change. I would one day be an adult and make my own choices, stir my own dust, leave. I thought I wanted to tell you. We had wishes in common, after all, to leave only our footprints behind in the dirt, the dust, to be washed away. But I didn't. The blood didn't matter as much as the hope it gave me. And my heart was wise enough to recognize, but not practiced enough to know, that it would one day wish it had whispered or fucking shouted, "You are the best, most real boy that I know." Even if at 12, I don't know how to stop the bleeding. For you. Beautiful boy gone. I remember.
Now I'd like to welcome, please, Goldberg, we're a multi-recording artist who is right here.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the organizers for having me here today. It's an honor to be part of this important day. And I'm going to sing you a song that I wrote. I actually wrote it following September 11th, but I think it has some things to say beyond that. It's called Choose Love. Just realized my scarf might get in the way. And it's really a plea for all of us to act out of love. You got a heart made to see you through, and the healing power can touch everything you do. Love is strong, it won't be denied. So look in your heart and see what's inside. You'll find love. You'll find love. You'll find love, love. You'll find love. I don't know if any of you like to sing, but if you do like to sing, that chorus with the word love over and over and again comes back. So feel free to join. We've been hurt. We've been knocked down to size, rocked to our foundation, taken by surprise. Moving on is the hardest part, trying to keep the sorrow from hardening our hearts. We got to love. We've got to love. We've got to love, love. We've got to love. Now some may say you've got to show you're strong, overpower others and prove them wrong. But muscle and might won't bridge the divide. We need some understanding to turn this tide. We need love. We need love. We need love, love. We need love. Talking about love for mercy. Talking about love for sweet release. Talking about love for freedom. Talking about love for peace. So travel on. Take the path to your heart. In your darkest hours, love will do its part. There's a fork in the road every day, and a little compassion can show the way. Choose love. Choose love. Choose love, love. Choose love. Choose love. Choose love. Choose love, love. Choose love. Choose love, love. Choose love. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you here today. Thank you.
And now we have Silveira, our community superstar, another community superstar, frontman of the Cliks, amazing performer.
Hi, y'all. Thank you for having me. This day is sad, but it can also be a celebration, in my opinion, because just because they're gone doesn't mean they were here, doesn't mean that they didn't have the courage to live as who they were. So I would like to celebrate that. And this song is actually a bit of a sad one. It was written from the perspective of somebody going through the thoughts of suicide, I think, which is something that a lot of people in our community unfortunately struggle with. It's called 400 Years. my whole life is passing me by in a blink of an eye. But my fate wasn't covered here. I guess I'll have to wait for another 100 years. For another 100 years. Lord, give me strength to bear this weight. I don't think I have much left in me. I don't have much left in me. I wish I could cry, but nothing swells, nothing rolling from these eyes. I feel like I'm in hell. So something lift me from the depths. Or I'm taking you with me for another 100 years. For another 100 years. For another 100 Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucas. Okay, folks, that's the end of the entertainment, and so now please enjoy the food, mingle. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for coming.